Welcome to Oakland Stories. I'm Oakland's Mayor Libby Schaaf, bringing you a series of conversations with people and about issues that matter to Oaklanders. Today's guest is none other than Arabella Martinez, and hers is an Oakland story that everyone should know. The founder of the Unity Council and one of the most influential Latinas in the United States, Arabella Martinez is a phenomenal Oakland story. Welcome, Arabella. I'm so excited to have you here. We have worked together for 20 years, so it is just a personal thrill to have you on this show today.
Thank you so much, Mayor, or as I know you, Libby.
You can call me Libby, please, please.
It's amazing it's been 20 years.
Well, it's gone by like this, right?
It has.
But we've gotten a few things done, both of us. But I want to talk about your Oakland story. You came to Oakland. You weren't born here, but talk to me about your feelings about Oakland and how growing up or kind of coming of age in Oakland shaped you to be the incredible leader that you are today.
Well, actually, I really started in Berkeley when I came to the East Bay. I went to UC Berkeley, and after I graduated, which was in 1959, I stayed in Oakland. My very first apartment and my very first job were in Oakland. But the way I became very active in Oakland is, of course, this was the height of the civil rights movement. And, you know, Berkeley and Oakland were really involved in the civil rights movement. They were leaders in the civil rights movement. But I didn't know of any groups in Oakland that were working with Latinos. I happened to go to a meeting in Oakland to hear one of our real heroes and foundation builders, Herman Gallegos. And he so inspired me, I went up to him and said, and I was this young girl, very naive. I said, I really want to get involved. So he said, well, I live in San Francisco, so you need to get involved in Oakland since you live in Oakland. And he put me in touch with one of my other mentors, Jimmy Delgadillo. Part of my becoming involved, I asked Jimmy, how come we didn't know the other organizations, Latino organizations? And he said to me, well, get them together. And not knowing any better, I said, okay. And so we had our first meeting, not then called the Unity Council, but our first meeting. Everybody was enthusiastic about this notion of getting together, of being able to work together, being able to, on issues of importance to the Latino community. The very first issue we got involved in was Proposition 14, the No on 14, which was the Rumford Act, as they called it. And Rumford had passed an amazing piece of legislation on housing discrimination, against housing discrimination. So we joined with African American groups in the city and throughout the state to fight this campaign that was so bad in terms of continuing the discrimination. And we lost, in part because of the way that proposition was worded. You didn't know whether you should vote no or yes. It was so badly worded. The second thing we did is that there were no social services in the Fruitvale area for Latinos of any kind. We didn't have a library. We didn't have anything in terms of social services. And so one of the first things we did was we brought in the Department of Employment, the California State Department of Employment. They posted an employee, a Spanish-speaking, Spanish heritage employee in a little house office that the Catholic Church, St. Elizabeth's Church, had given us on 35th Avenue. We didn't have to pay any rent. All we had to do was pay utilities. And so we created the first Unity Council office on 35th Avenue. The little house has now been taken down. But that was our first office. That's where we met. That's where we started our advocacy effort in terms of Prop 14, and where we started out as in terms of trying to deliver social services right there in Fruitvale.
And this was the first time that there was an employment office with a bilingual employee.
That's exactly right.
Serving Oakland because of you.
Well, not because of me, because of a lot of people. But in any case, so we really, that's how we started. And then one of my mentors, African-American, Evelio Grillo, who had been part of this group of African-Americans that included Mayor Wilson. It's a who-who of the African-American community of that time. He said to me, if you're really going to help your people, you have to go back to school and get your professional degree. And it was the first time anybody had ever said that to me. And I said, well, I can't get into graduate school. I wasn't a great student. And besides, it cost too much money. Now, remember, tuition then was like $100 a semester. It still was too much money. So he said, don't worry, I'll get you in and I'll get you a fellowship. I did get into graduate school. I did get a John Hay Whitney Fellowship, which helped me get through the school. And I also discovered the whole business of community organizing and administration, because Evelio and Herman Gallegos, the first person who introduced, had both gone through a specialized program designed for them in administration and community organization. But this was now the second class of this administration community organization program at Berkeley. So it was brand new, and everybody was really excited about it because it took us out of casework and out of group work and into really, it was really designed to develop the social work leadership in the public sector as well as the private sector.
Arabella, in 1977, you got appointed by then President Jimmy Carter to the highest position in the federal government that a Latina had ever been appointed to. What did that feel like?
Well, one, I was overwhelmed and disbelieving. My husband, David, kept saying I was going to be appointed because I kept getting all of these calls. And he'd say, you're going to be assistant secretary. And I kept on saying, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe the director of an office, but not assistant secretary. It's just not possible. But I actually was interviewed for an assistant secretary position in the Department of Labor, as well as HEW, and then for a position in the White House. And so they wanted to know what I wanted to do. And I thought I should really stay within the lane I knew the best, which was social welfare. So that's how So I had my choice of that position.
Well, so you were in Washington, D.C., you're working at the federal level. What brought you back to Oakland?
I was homesick.
What did you miss about Oakland?
Well,
what do you love about Oakland?
Well, first of all, Oakland gave me my start. Oakland allowed me to grow, to do things that are not in my wildest dreams would I have imagined I could do. I never thought of myself as a leader. It never occurred to me that I could be. I didn't necessarily want to be a social worker when I went to undergraduate school, but that was the only thing I knew. Because in my family, no one had gone to college. I was the first one. And so I had very limited ambition at the time. And I don't mean that I didn't want to work hard. I just mean that it didn't seem possible for me, for example, to say I want to go to law school. Yeah. Or that I wanted to be a doctor. It just was not in the realm of possibility.
But there was something about Oakland that let a first in her family Latina woman become an amazing leader and break a glass ceiling at the White House.
Well, I had wonderful mentors, and most of them happened to be men. Mm-hmm. And they really encouraged me to take chances.
Well, and I will say from personal experience, you have paid that mentoring gift forward. When we come back, we'll talk about one of Arabella's great achievements for Oakland, and that is the Fruitvale Village.
What makes Oakland a great place to work?
The community. The community is vibrant. You can just feel the love when you come here.
I love working for the City of Oakland because of its rich diversity. That's a huge reason why I came to work here. To make a difference in the community that I was raised in and being able to provide the community a nice, fun, safe environment for kids to come play.
In Oakland, we want the best and the brightest who are willing to innovate and ready to serve a diverse community in one of the greatest cities in California. We're looking for everyone from librarians and building inspectors to first responders, while offering competitive pay, pension, and excellent benefits. It's never been a better time to serve your community.
I like working for the City of Oakland because as an auditor, I get to see the inner workings of government. I love hanging out at Lake Merrick, going to the farmers market on the weekends.
One day I could be working with OPD, and the next day I can be working with the mayor's office, and it allows every day to be different and new.
If you're interested in a career with the City of Oakland, please go to Oakland's NeoGov website and apply today. Join our team.
Welcome back to Oakland Stories. I'm Oakland's Mayor Libby Schaaf, and I'm here with Arabella Martinez, one of our amazing Latina heroes in Oakland. Now, Arabella, you were the co-founder and first executive director of the Unity Council. Now, when we started working together in 1999, I was amazed by the Unity Council. People have heard of CDCs or community development corporations, but I don't know if people realize how the Unity Council was literally caring for the Fruitvale neighborhood from, cradle to grave, pretty much. You ran Head Start, early childhood development. You ran after-school programs and merchant, commercial assistance and economic development. You were developing affordable housing. You had senior housing. I mean, you were doing it all. But the thing that I think you will always be best known for is the Fruitvale Village. Really one of certainly Oakland's and arguably the country's transit-oriented developments. But I know that this story starts with a fight. Talk to me about a really bad and insulting idea for a parking garage that Bart had in the late 80s, early 90s. Talk to me about that fight.
Well, this was sort of brought to the attention of the community very late in the planning process, of Bart's planning process. And by showing us this incredibly ugly structure that was going to be built on part of their parking lot. And this was going to be a 4-story structure all concrete, gray, ugly. And what it was going to do is further separate BART passengers from the Fruitvale community. The parking lots, just the flat ones, already did it. And they were so scary that people were scared to walk up from the BART station up to East 14th Street. So we organized the community, and we had this incredible meeting where people just got up and really slammed BART for this monstrosity. And BART and the city was supporting us. Of course, Ignacio was supporting us, but all the community was. I mean, all the organizations were behind us. So,
and just for they also had proposed a similar garage in Rockridge, right? And that went nowhere.
That was probably earlier and probably was not as ugly.
but the community got rid of that right away,
yeah,
right? But
right.
BART was still proceeding with this monstrosity in the Fruitvale neighborhood in Oakland.
So BART, to its credit, said, okay, we won't build it. But you're going to lose the money that we would have brought into the community, which was around $10 to $13 million. And so we said, okay, we don't want it here. Subsequently, one of the BART real estate people, Jeff Ordway, came to me and he said, let me share some ideas with you about what we could do with these parking lots. And he explained what transit villages were like and what he was trying to accomplish in terms of these transit villages. And I thought it was a magnificent idea because here were 10 acres of land that was not being used. And there wasn't a lot of land that you could buy and build such a village. And so then we started talking about what was possible. And we then started talking we could build a new clinic. La Clinica was housed in all these tiny little buildings in Fruitvale. They had no space. The library was in this tiny little space. There was, the Unity Council was cramped. It just, the senior center was meeting at Posada, but they didn't really have facilities. So we thought that by having, and Head Start, we didn't have enough room for Head Start, and the Head Start program was growing. So we thought, here are real tenants, because we had money to pay for rent for these programs. And so we created this vision. We were very happy because Elihu Harris, who was also one of my mentors, Elihu Harris brought the Secretary of Transportation to the Fruitvale. And he said to me, explain to the Secretary what you'd like to do with this parking lot. So I started explaining this vision of housing and community services and the connection between transportation and reducing traffic and all of that kind of stuff. So that went very well. And then I happened to go to a conference in Detroit where the secretary was at. And he said, are you going to be in Oakland in the next 2 days? And I said, I wasn't planning to. But if I should be, I'll be there. So I changed my flight, and we came back, and he comes back with one of those big checks, and it was really a big check, $400,000. Now, this allowed us to do all the preliminary sort of design work, environmental work. It gave us our marketing tools. The design work gave us our marketing materials, because we could see. We went through a whole community process. And one of the things about the Unity Council was that we did involve the community in everything we did, whether it was in the facade improvement program, whether it was in our crime fighting program, whether it was in our cleanup programs, or it was an open space and recreation program. We had all of those programs. And so we involved the community also in the planning for the transit village.
Well, and I remember that. I was witness to that back in 1999 and several years. The other thing that really impressed me is that while you were having this vision of this whole new development on what was some ugly surface parking lots and what would be certainly better than just a monstrosity, you were also thinking about how can this development help and not hurt the existing small merchants. You said East 14th. I know it as East 14th. Newcomers to Oakland probably know it better as International Boulevard. But there were a lot of small merchants, and they were kind of frightened of this big, shiny new development that was going on the BART station. Talk to me a little bit about how you intentionally kind of brought the existing merchants and commercial area up so that it would be more integrated with the new development.
Well, we actually started with crime fighting, because when I got there in 1990, Fruitvale was horrible. And I mean, the stores were all shuttered. There was graffiti. There's a lot of crime.
Huge vacancy rate, right?
A huge vacancy rate.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was 50% or whatever it was. It was dirty. And nobody would shop in the Fruitvale because they were afraid. So our focus was on 14th International Boulevard, on doing the facade improvement work. But we started off very simply with cleaning up the streets, cleaning up the graffiti, meeting with the merchants, dealing with crime. We worked with them, again, cooperatively. Initially, they were concerned because they didn't know what we could do, and quite frankly, we didn't either. We just knew we wanted to do something. And the facade improvement, because some of those facade improvements were just pieces of art, real works of art. And they told the story of the Hispanic heritage, because that had originally, as you know, been a Hispanic land grant, or Spanish land grant. And then we started our festival, the Dia de los Muertos festival, and that grew from like 2,500 to 100,000 at one point. And celebrating, again, our culture, celebrating the Fruitvale, celebrating the food, it was that kind of thing. So the merchants saw that they were benefiting, and in fact, they benefited so much that their taxes increased to the city. And we became, at one point, we were remitting more taxes than any other part of the city, including Rockridge. So I think, again, it had to do with how do you get people engaged? How do you make them feel that you're working with them, for them, not against them? And we also didn't want to have issues with people saying, well, yeah, but pretty soon we'll be pushed out of our neighborhood. So and because we provided all these services, senior services, childcare services, you name it.
Homebuyer assistance, job training,
yes,
everything.
We did all. So the result of that, when we went to the city, if you remember.
Oh, I do.
First of all, for getting our CEQA clearance, and second of all, getting our final permits, not one single person spoke up against us. This is a huge project.
That is great.
No one spoke up against us. So.
In Oakland, that's amazing. And then Arabella, from start to finish, from vision to actually cutting the ribbon on phase one, I know the whole transit village isn't even done yet, but on phase one, how many years was that?
It took about 11 years.
11 years.
Yeah.
It's a lot of persistence. It's very Oakland.
Yeah, well, Oakland was wonderful. The city just, we had more cooperation from the city of Oakland in terms of money and in pushing things and in pushing Bart. And
I worked for Ignacio de la Fuente, who was the council member for the Fruitvale during those years. And I can say from personal experience, he was doing a lot of pushing inside City Hall.
And you were there pushing too, because he'd say, do this, and you would do it. Really. So I think, projects take a long time. And we were a nonprofit building $100 million development. The biggest issue for us was financing, getting the finances. Citibank, to its credit, made the single largest loan to a nonprofit that they had ever made in its history up to that point. But it took us 7 years of negotiating with other banks, and then finally Citibank stepped in.
When I know the city as a tenant with the library, the senior center, the Head Start Center, we were an important part of that financial picture. I think this project is such a great example of the saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And the level of partnership, of community engagement and ownership that the Fruitvale Village had was phenomenal, and obviously it produced an amazing result. When we come back, we're going to talk about lessons learned from that Fruitvale Village, what it tells us about the future of Oakland, some of Arabella's hopes for Oakland's future, when we come back.
Did you know that K-Top streams live online? That's right, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Visit our live stream today at oaklandca.gov/oakmeeting. K-Top, your government access TV station.
Welcome back to Oakland Stories. I'm Oakland's Mayor Libby Schaaf here with Arabella Martinez, talking about the incredible contributions of the Unity Council, what was then known as the Spanish-speaking Unity Council, and particularly the Fruitvale Village. Oakland's first, we now, use the term TOD all the time, but you really invented it, transit-oriented development. Now, you just told us the story of the 11-year journey to open just the first phase of that transit village, and all the work you did to make sure that that huge development complemented and supported all the existing small mom and pop shops that were already in the Fruitvale, that the whole community grew stronger through, your preschool programs, your childcare, your job placement, all the different things that you do as a community development corporation to lift up the entire community, not just the buildings, not just the built environment. And one of the things that I love reading about recently is that UCLA just did a study of the Fruitvale Transit Village and concluded that it actually helped prevent displacement out of the Fruitvale. And when I look at kind of the demographic shifts in Oakland, in 1970, when you were first forming the Spanish-speaking Unity Council, Oakland's Latino population, if I recall, was about 6.5%. And in the most recent community survey data that I've seen, Latinos may now be actually the largest demographic group in Oakland. The last statistic I saw was 27%. So there's been a huge influx of the Latino population. The transformative work that you have done in the Fruitvale has not only made that neighborhood look more beautiful, but talk to us about why you think UCLA concluded that it also prevented displacement of Latino and low-income families that have been there all along and deserved to stay.
Well, first of all, we provided a lot of jobs. I mean, we do. I don't know how many there are now, but I think it's well over 200. Maybe it's even 500. But we started with like that many. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is people want to live there. They want to stay there because that's where they get their services. That's also where they can find the foods that they want. So they shop there. And so I think that's one of the reasons. But they also, for example, on the Head Start program, we have a huge Head Start program. We started out with 17 kids when I started in 1990. When I left, it was 513, and I don't know how many there are now. It's probably double that. But we also hired those parents. And some of their kids went to college as a result of that. So part of it is we created a sense of community. We also made it a safe community in terms of the open space and recreation effort that we did. And because we were inclusive, involved them in even the crime fighting programs, which is very dangerous, and on the facade improvement programs and all of those. They wanted to stay. They wanted to stay in the community. So I think that's one thing.
Well, that is a great inspiration because I don't know if you've noticed, but Oakland is having a bit of a building boom.
Yes, I've noticed. You can hardly avoid it.
Well, and as the mayor, at this moment for Oakland, it is both very exciting and a little frightening at the same time. And I am very determined to not kind of go the way of San Francisco, to sell our soul. I'm very determined to be inspired and to think that projects like the Fruitvale Village can show that you can have development and revitalization and do it in a way that does not cause displacement, but actually benefits the community that was there before the development. So this has been an inspiration for me. And the exciting news is the Fruitvale Village is not finished. In fact, the last time you and I were there, we were breaking ground for Casa Arabella, a tribute to you, 94 units of affordable housing. And I know that that's just the tip of the iceberg. Talk to us about what's in store for additional development around that Fruitvale BART station.
The second phase was always going to be housing and affordable housing. I think part of the value of nonprofit community development corporations is that the profit is not in terms of money back to the organization, although some of it is, but it's very little. But it's that we're using that money to reinvest in the community. And I think the biggest issue for this city and any other city or any other town is financing. We lost all the redevelopment money. That, I think, was a big blow to cities all over in California. So I think we have to find some creative ways to finance. But I think if this city has always had a commitment to social justice, to economic justice, it may not be 100% successful, but the reason people want to live in Oakland and want to stay in Oakland and want to come back to Oakland is because Oakland has for years really talked about how do we make it better living conditions for people who want to live here, who have lived here most of their lives, who want to grow old here. So I think there is an ethos in Oakland that really is making an effort to keep Oakland people in Oakland.
Well, thank you for lifting up that Oakland ethos and honestly being a living example of it. You talked about Oakland's commitment to social justice and economic justice. You now serve as a port commissioner.
Yes, I do.
You oversee.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to appoint you. You oversee one of this region's economic engines. Just talk to me big picture about your wishes for Oakland. How can we take that history of commitment to economic justice, to social justice, to the next level as we look into the future? How do we make more Arabellas?
Well, how do we make more Libbies? I think the path that we're on, including all of this development that's going on, is really important that we keep doing that because it does provide jobs, it does provide housing, but we do have to find ways to finance affordable housing. I think the development at the port with the Oakland A's is going to be transformative for Oakland because, again, it'll bring many more jobs. There will be some housing in there. But I do think we have to have a vision of how we want to grow and what kinds of resources we need and where do we get those resources to really make that dream come true. But I think Oakland is transforming now, and thanks a lot to your leadership. And to, I have to say, in terms of the port, I think the port is the economic engine of Oakland in many, many regards. The port commissioners are really dedicated servants, public servants. So I think working, and it does have to be these public-private partnerships, and the private includes the nonprofit organizations. I think you well know not just the Unity Council, but the other nonprofit organizations that have built housing and done a lot of economic development in Oakland.
Well, and you've kind of taken community development to a new level. The idea that community development is not just building new buildings. It's not even just building affordable housing. It's ensuring that kids get quality preschool. It's ensuring that people in that neighborhood get jobs in that neighborhood.
And can live there.
Or if they can get jobs in, say, San Francisco, they have affordable public transit to get themselves there. The Fruitvale Transit Village has really been held up as a model. It's impacted how cities across this country are developing around good transit. And certainly you see us copycatting your example at the MacArthur BART station, at the Coliseum BART station, and now at West Oakland BART station. So it's an amazing impact. I hope, Arabella, as you look around this city, that you feel tremendous pride in what you've done for generations to come.
Well, I do feel pride, but I feel proud of our city and of you. I think we're in a much better place than we were 10, 20 years ago.
Although, what are the pitfalls that we should avoid?
We have got to worry about what we're going to do about housing.
I agree.
I mean, that's and also traffic. I mean, traffic is and roads. My
Wait,
road is
I'm working on the potholes. I'm working on it.
and roads. But no, given the resources that the city has available to it, I think they've been used very wisely over the past 10 years.
Yeah, and Oakland can't do it alone. I mean, obviously, you see those cranes in the sky. We are building housing, although we don't have enough financing to make enough of it affordable for low-income families, and that's something that we're working on. But it's got to be a regional solution. Oakland is not in this alone. So I know as we kind of try and figure out how we get out of the dissolution of redevelopment, I'm really excited about a regional housing finance authority. So that's something, you have my commitment that I'm working on.
That's great.
Well, Arabella, it's just been such an honor to work with you over these years. You have such an important role that you've played in Oakland. And I want all Oaklanders to know your Oakland story. And particularly as we've seen the influence and just the blossoming of the Latino culture in Oakland, your story is so important for everyone to hear. Do you have any parting thoughts for us about particularly what you want Latinos growing up in Oakland to know about their story as Latinos in Oakland?
Well, I think they need to know that things are different and better than they were when I first started out 50 years ago. I could not imagine that we would be where we are today. I could not have imagined La Clínica de la Raza or Centro Legal de la Raza or all the other Latino organizations that are really working to improve the conditions, not just of Latinos, but of everybody. So I've seen in my time a revolution. There were no Latino elected officials, hardly any in California, none in Oakland when I started out, none. So I've seen a real transformation in Oakland, but it's not simply in terms of the political landscape, but really in terms of how the city projects itself. And it's no longer the little sister across the bay. And a lot of people have worked very, very hard to make that change.
Well, I appreciate that perspective and acknowledge that we always have much more work to do. But I hope that little girls out there hear your story and know that leadership is in their future, no matter what they think. Thank you so much, Arabella, for joining us for your Oakland story. And please tune in again as we share people and issues that matter to Oaklanders.